for the interim.
Okay, thank you for announcing that. I appreciate it. Okay, next item is approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff? No changes, okay. Do I have a
Madam Chair?
motion?
No.
Yes,
I would move to, I'm sorry. I was trying to be good and go in turn. I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any, Recorder, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Councilor Coppler, Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
Okay, thank you. The next item is approval of the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to remove? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
So, Madam Chair,
Second. Oh,
this is Joni Aaron's. My public comment is with regard to finding out.
We're not on the public comment yet on the agenda.
But one of my questions is asking the board to refrain from approving the consent agenda until answers are provided without discussion about.
I'm gonna have to have you wait until we get to public comment. And then we'll listen to what your questions are at that time. Okay? I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Roll call, will you call the roll, please, or the vote, please?
Sure.
Recorder?
Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
yes.
Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Hanson,
I'm gonna abstain.
and Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Okay, the next item is approval of the minutes from the June 4th meeting. And before we do that, I would like to read into the record, I state for the record and our minutes that the only matter discussed during the executive session of our last board meeting on June 4th, 2020 was the matter as stated in the motion to go into executive session and no action was taken. So I don't think that's a motion, right, Nancy?
No, Madam Chair, you're correct. It is not a motion. It's just a
Okay.
statement we want included in the minutes. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're on approval of the minutes. Commissioner Hanson.
I move to approve the minutes with the addition of the statement you read about executive session from the last meeting.
Thank you.
Last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. You know, I'm gonna have to ask for the recorder. What is your name again?
My name is Karen.
Karen. I was thinking it was Karen, but I apologize. Okay,
Well, thank you for asking me.
yes, Karen, would you please?
Sure. Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
and Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Yeah, that motion passes.
All right, matters from the public. Now we are at the point where we can ask you to, let's see. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to look up the message from your public comment, but you're still on, I can see. Do you want to go ahead and read your statement?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my name,
Point of order, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, are you setting a time limit on this public comment?
We usually give 2 minutes. So thank you, Councilor Romero Worth. So there's 2 minutes allotted for this. Thank you. Go, please proceed.
good afternoon. My name is Joni Aarons. I am with Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety. At the last meeting, there were two issues that came up that I thought would be addressed by the board at today's meetings. And they are that Mr. Roach said that the city finance department had asked for a 26% cut to the city's contribution to the BDD. What is the current status of the proposed cuts? And secondly, there was a discussion about whether the city would receive the same amount of water if there was a reduction in their payment. What is the status of this discussion? In my written comments that were submitted timely, I asked that these matters be discussed before the consent agenda is considered. I was concerned about the fact that if the consent agenda is approved, the expenses could reach $492,000. So I appreciate this opportunity to speak to the board, and I hope that answers to my questions will be provided. Thank you.
Thank you for making that public comment. And is it Joni Arends? Is that,
Yes.
am I getting your name right? Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Carpenter, you'll take this under advisement and we can discuss it at the next agenda planning session?
Madam Chair, absolutely. We'll take this under advisement and have further discussions.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda are under informational items. Number 7, report on June 30th, 2020 Fiscal Services Audit Committee. Mackie Romero.
Madam Chair, members of the board, a Fiscal Service and Audit Committee meeting was held. Actually was held on Monday, June 29th, just due to some scheduling conflicts.
Right.
But in attendance was myself, BDD Financial Manager, Rick Carpenter, BDD Facilities Manager, from the county, Commissioner Hamilton, Ira Royaball, County Administration Manager, and from Las Campanas, Tom Eaglehoff, James Lightfoot, and Andrew Resnick, who's the controller for LC Water Cooperative. During this meeting, I did provide an update on the fiscal year 18-19 audit and financial statements. That update is that our audit is complete. We had an exit conference on June 29th. Financial statements were printed today and should be delivered to the state auditor before 5 o'clock today. Once I get a final okay to print from the state auditor, I will present the final financial statements to the partners and the board. And so hopefully I'll get that done in the next couple of months as soon as we get that from the state auditor. We discussed consent agenda items 10 through 13. No major issues or concerns, as a majority of them were reoccurring. And then we also discussed action item number 14, which I will present to the board during this meeting. And so unless there's any other questions, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mackie. Does the board have any questions for Mackie? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mackie. We will move on. Item 8, monthly update on BDD operations. Randy Segru. Randy?
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. Diversions approximated for the month of June, 6.43 million gallons per day. Drinking water deliveries through 4A, 5A booster station averaged about 5.05 million gallons per day. That is increasing now. Raw water delivery to Las Campanas averaged 1.2 million gallons per day. On-site treated and non-treated water storage, just a bit, 0.18 million gallons per day. BDD is providing approximately 42% of the water supply to city and county for the month. We have a regional demand drought summary attached. And the graph at the bottom compares our June diversions to our average over the past 9 years. All in all, we had another pretty good month. The river's holding up for us, and turbidity and water quality are good. I stand for questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Hamilton.
Thanks. Thanks for the report. I imagine most of you have seen the report that Albuquerque is planning to stop diversion of river water. So I'm not sure if I should ask it now or after the facility manager report, so you guys can tell me when you want to address it. But I imagine that has implications for BDD operations, and I wondered if you might say a few words about that.
Madam Chair,
And
Commissioner
Councilor-
Hamilton, I do
Commissioner-
defer to Rick Carpenter. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, sorry to talk over you, Randy. I didn't mean to do that.
Go ahead.
I was planning on covering that in my report, Commissioner Hamilton, if that's okay,
Great.
and with you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
fine.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Randy? Okay, Commissioner Hanson.
So, on this map here, it's really hard to see because it comes in gray. Maybe if it was online, it was in color. But I didn't go online. I relied on my book. So I can't tell if there's a place where there's Abiquiu water or it telling the story. So I'm just kind of checking.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner Hanson, I see what you mean. I apologize for that. And in future, I'll try and improve the legibility of our graph, or possibly change it to a different type of graph that's a little more easily discerned. We do have water stored in Abiquiu. And again, I defer to Rick Carpenter and his facility manager's report, perhaps to touch on that subject, but I will make every attempt to upgrade the graph a little bit in future so it's more legible.
Thank you. I would appreciate it. It's just I read from the book. Otherwise, thank you very much for the report, Randy.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comments, questions for Randy? Seeing none, I'll move on. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you much.
The next item is number 9, report from the facilities manager, Rick Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I'll just build on that segue. We do have a lot of water stored in Abiquiu that we transferred up I guess it was 3 years now from Elephant Butte. And our full allocation is still in Heron. So as far as BDD San Juan Chama water and the county San Juan Chama water, we're in good shape. I have no concerns about that whatsoever. We could go probably 2.5 or 3 years just on that stored water alone, not counting even native flows. We have been working with the county to coordinate how and when to exchange native flows versus San Juan Chama water. We've been doing a good job of that. I don't have any concerns at this time that there won't be enough water for the BDD to provide what's required of us for demand. My concern is, however, as was mentioned earlier, that MRGCD is going to try and string out what they have left in their storage. Albuquerque usually follows their lead, and they have indicated that they are going to do that. So I'm concerned about the amount of carriage water that's going to be in the river, probably mostly native water, maybe August or September. We'll see how that goes. We do have a meeting planned, and we have invited county staff to join us Tuesday morning to discuss this very topic on how the BDD will deal with that and how we integrate in with the other sources of supply with the city of Santa Fe. This is the type of condition that we've planned for and that we've invested in, so that if one source or another source is offline for whatever reason, that we have enough resiliency to still meet demand. The question is how are we going to do that? Not whether if. I don't have any question that we won't be able to meet demand. It's just how do we want to go about that? How's the most efficient way to approach this issue. But it is going to be a challenging hydrologic year in the Rio Grande. There's no doubt about that. It's evident now, and it's something that we're paying attention to. And we will report back to the board as needed as this evolves. So that's my report on that topic. I'm happy to take questions on that before I move on.
Any questions? Okay. JC, no, it's not JC. Eaglehoff, right? Eagle. Is that you? Oh, there you
Tom,
are. Eaglehoff, yes.
Hey,
You
Rick,
first,
what,
and then Commissioner Hamilton.
Rick, what's the minimum CFS in the river? That is it less than 300, or do you have any idea what the cutoff point will be?
Hi, Tom. Good to see you.
Yeah.
We are assessing that because it's changed. It's always changing. That's part of the problem with the lawsuit that we have. The riverbed changes. We welded some plates on there a couple of years ago when the copper dam was up. We're trying to put those calculations together as we speak on what is the minimum. Is it 300 CFS? Is it 400 CFS? How does the channel behave? There are so many variables. I can tell you that we're doing that analysis, and it's in process.
But there isn't anything that restricts us from diverting for like the minnow or anything like that. You can still divert some amount of water as long as there's enough water in the river.
There's a permit restriction that we need to differentiate between what's physically divertible and what the permit says. The permit says, I believe, and Randy, you may remember this, I believe below 200 CFS, because of Endangered Species Act restrictions, we can't divert.
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Tom, your name says Wendell.
It's Wendell Thomas. I go by Wendell or Tom, whichever.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does Commissioner Hamilton, you had some questions.
Yes, thank you. It's a very small point about the meeting next week. I appreciate that you invited county staff. It's my understanding that John Dupuy is going to be out all next week. So I don't know if there's some other way to fill that in. Maybe if John's already gotten back with you, he'll work that out with you. But if it's slipping through the cracks, maybe you can contact him and see if there's someone else who can attend in his stead, if necessary.
Can somebody talk about the meeting that you're describing?
Yeah, Rick.
It's a weekly meeting that we have Tuesday mornings to coordinate water resources management, to discuss topics exactly like this. This is going to be a priority for that meeting. We'll probably discuss other things. We also do long-term planning as a part of the function of that meeting. But this will be front and center at that Tuesday meeting, and we have the principals that organized the meeting have already agreed that this is something that we need to tackle at that meeting. With regard to John Dupuy, didn't know he was going to be out. I'm assuming that he will appoint someone who is capable of filling in for him. Depending on when this board meeting ends, I will call him directly and ask him that very question.
Thanks. It was just a heads up. I appreciate it.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson.
So I had the similar concerns that Commissioner Hamilton had about the meeting, who was going to attend from the county, and the concerns that I have about Albuquerque stopping diverting. So I look forward to having a report on that because I think that is a really important issue that needs further conversation. So thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Rick? Rick, is that the end of, oh, well, on this item, any other
Well, Madam Chair, just a couple of other things.
Okay,
Um,
go on.
Mackie and I and Jesse have been working through the budget items, and that's still a work in progress. And we are looking forward to participating in the city's budget hearings. I think they're scheduled for mid-July. But we're working on that, and wanted the board, it's not an agenda item, but I wanted the board to know that that's something that we are working on and putting a lot of thought and effort into. Also related to that, there's some discussions going on with regard to furloughs and how that relates to the BDD. That is also an ongoing discussion. I think that the good news on that is that the discussions are taking place as opposed to not taking place. So that will be going on, and I will report out to the board as needed on that. I won't necessarily wait till the next board meeting. If I can do it via email, then I will. And then lastly, this came up in the FISAC meeting. The operations building at the BDD has had some issues through the years with the chillers and the HVAC in the summer months. They've gone out in the past. They have actually failed at this point. So there's no air conditioning in that building. It's pretty uncomfortable by the time you get to about 1 or 2 in the afternoon. But also the control room and the server room and telecommunications, they have to be maintained at a certain temperature, or they will fail. And if they fail, then we're in big trouble. So the facility manager has the authority, according to the documents, to expend those funds in order to get that problem fixed, and then report that to the board, which is what I'm doing now. I've authorized funds to be expended to get that problem fixed as soon as we possibly can. It's going to be in the neighborhood of $200,000. Mackie tells me the best place to take it out of is the major repair and replacement fund, and so that's what we're doing. But I'm required to report that to the board.
Okay, any questions, comments for Rick? Commissioner Hamilton.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Uncooperative mouse. Thank you. First of all, thank you for maintaining this ongoing discussion about furloughs. And I do ultimately have a question for you. I want to say that I was kind of disappointed to hear that the city extended the furloughs, including the furloughs on BDD, without talking to the board. And really, the disappointment was that we had this discussion 2 months ago when the furloughs were first applied across the board, at which point the city said, listen, you're right, process is important and we'll always talk to you. So it's a little disappointing to have to come back and say, there's a reason that process is there, and it's because the BDD is responsible for the board is responsible for appropriate operations at the BDD. And one thing we've been trying to get at is whether whether furloughs is having appropriate information to judge whether furloughs for essential personnel at BDD are even acceptable, or whether they have the potential to impact operations. I am all in favor of deferring expenses that are deferrable, that don't impact operations. We had that discussion with respect to the crane and whether that would be acceptable or not. And there are many other places where we can think about potentially deferring costs, but we've been trying to get at having enough information supplied to us to understand whether essential personnel, which in my mind, at the very least, would include operations people, facility managers, finance, and maintenance, that 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 we have to have data to make a valid decision. I think we probably have, or my understanding is, Rick, you may be in a position to have been accumulating information on what it really takes for different essential staff. And I feel like we need a report out on that to assure that we can address how the people that we need and whether they're, because we have the budget to operate fully staffed and not have essential people furloughed.
we're still doing that.
I had talked, for the last couple of meetings that in the big picture, we budget a certain amount of personnel, and you cannot, on principle, cut 10% of essential personnel and produce the same work unless we have consistently over budgeted, or you're asking people to work without compensation to fill in the need. Sometimes people do that and it's fine, but on a predictable basis, that's not acceptable. I think everybody gets my drift. And so I would really like to get a report back on what data we have that shows what personnel we need, whether essential people have had to fill in gaps so that we know how to address the issue of furloughs and whether we can, how to address the issue and assure that we have people working sufficiently to actually do what we need and not threaten BDD operations.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Hanson.
Well, can we just, Rick, though, I'm kind of requesting, Rick, can you supply that data?
This is on the same topic. So after reading the minutes, it says in the minutes, Commissioner Hamilton asked, so I'd like to see the layout of the assessment. So this is like, and there was nothing brought forward about that. And there's a number of places where Commissioner Hamilton and myself have both asked for some kind of assessment. I am also incredibly disappointed on the fact that that the furloughs have taken place at Buckman, but I'm also happy or I don't think happy is the right word, but I'm glad to hear that you're at least talking about it with the city. But, it's kind of like on page of the minutes, page 10, page 17, Commissioner Hamilton asked repeatedly for an analysis, and maybe that just can't happen until August. I do see where Ms. Romero says that might not happen until August, and I understand with the fact that the city just finally finished the audit. But once again, I am going to say this, and I said this before, water is essential. And so with that, you could answer Commissioner Hamilton and myself's questions because they're basically the same.
Can I just get one clarification, make one clarification, Madam Chair? I believe that there's potentially a slight difference between what Mackie was referring to as not being available till August. That was, I think, a complete financial analysis on the budget because of waiting for things from the city. And we do need a complete budget analysis.
You are correct.
Great, thank you. But part of what I'm asking, if Rick might be able to do an analysis of the last few months of operations on personnel, like not just pulling timesheets, because it's very possible that submitted timesheets reflect, what's allowed from furloughs, but actual hours worked and needs, so that we can see if we have a discrepancy between the allowed furlough hours and what we really need to do operations. That's what I'm asking for. kind of the personnel assessment.
So, Madam Chair, would you like me to respond?
Yes,
to
go
that?
ahead.
So when we talk about analysis, I can certainly do a formal report and bring it back to the board. I'm not sure what the methodology for that would be. We'd have to research it. But what I can assure the board of is that I am in constant communication with maintenance and operations staff to make sure that we have the coverage that we need to have in order to perform our essential functions. And if I have to call somebody in and pay them overtime, I'm going to do it. And somebody can tell me, you know, I shouldn't have done it later, but I'm still going to do it if we have to do that to have the coverage we need. But so far we're managing. It's challenging, but we're managing. But if we want to put it in a written report and submit it to the board, I can take that on. I'll do that if that's the board's direction.
Yes, Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you. I don't want to put anybody in a bad position. It can sound very formal to ask for something in writing. On the other hand, I still believe that we have a very high chance that we're having people work what used to be full-time. They're covering those uncovered hours. And there's a point at which that's unacceptable. And I have no way, since I am not there managing it, I'm not seeing, and we're the actual activities that go on. Without information, I can argue till I'm blue in the face that it's inappropriate to furlough operations maintenance staff and the people because then we're asking them, in order to make sure the plant's operated smoothly, we're indirectly, implicitly forcing them to work beyond those hours. I have no way to show that. I am asking for information that documents, even if it's presented verbally, that says, because you're the one observing all these people, that shows what we need. If we really can work for another few months, we can consider continuing furloughs. That furlough savings stays with BDD, and certainly it gives it, if we can really achieve those savings, it gives dollars to be spent next fiscal year or in the next 6 months or whatever. But as a responsible board member, I am not comfortable just happily going along with furloughs that were imposed across the board without consideration of essential and non-essential expenditures that need more analysis than what they're being given. And so I'm asking, it's very hard to ask for information that's difficult to provide. But frankly, I'm trying to give the bounds of what I'm asking for and the rationale for it so that you understand, so that there's some understanding of what it is. I'm trying to get the board enough information to make decisions about those furloughs.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Now, let me jump in here for a second. I mentioned some months, well, maybe a couple of months ago, or a couple of meetings ago, that I had spoken to our finance director about BDD's operations and our independence from the city and the county and Las Campanas, and that we have a partnership. And so it was quite eye-opening for her to understand how this worked. Some time ago, I also mentioned to the city manager how this worked, but since the real decisions and the fine-tooth monies are analyzed by the finance director, I thought it was important for her to know. So I did have a call into her, and she was going to call me back this afternoon, but I don't think she got a chance. What I wanted to say to her, and I'm glad to hear Rick say, that I wanted to say to her that I believed BDD should have a seat at the and a time slot at the upcoming finance committee meetings, whereby part of our time would not just be reporting on our numbers and our request, but that we would also present a little, I guess, a synopsis of how the BDD operates in the whole scheme of things with regard to the city and county, and what statutory authority we have, and that our hats are different when it comes to this board. They're not city, they're not county, yet the city holds the fiscal responsibility for us. So I see this as a civics lesson and a budget request meeting, because you might recall some time ago I said we have to teach people how to treat us. And that goes along with the same thing, the same train of thought. I don't think there's anybody who wants to be, vindictive against BDD. It sure feels like it a bit, not vindictive, but it just feels like, yeah, we aren't consulted. But the more we educate the people, and I think certainly you're the county, you get it, right? But I'm not so sure the city gets it. So, and yet they're having to balance a budget. So our problem is we're not consulted, because I think, since the staff really is under the city's purview, it seems like it's a city program, but it's not. So we need to educate on who we are and why we're here, and why we need to be in the ball game when it comes to some of these decisions. So I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Hanson. We've heard them, and I think it's important to tag along with what Rick's budget presentation is going to be. And Rick, I'd like to work with you on that, to have some opening comments about just what I've mentioned, and then go along with whatever nooks and crannies they want to talk about with the budget. And we have a finance committee member here, Councilor Carol Romero Worth, and so she'll be in a different role during that process. But I think it's good to have this conversation, because again, we need to educate the city, because as I mentioned before, Finance Director McCoy didn't really know this. She didn't know, she's new, so she's still new. And we had a similar conversation about SWAMA. And so it was a very good education for her, but I think there are other powers that be that need to hear how this board operates, why it's come to be, and remind people that water is essential. So I hear you, and we'll see what we can come up with for that particular budget hearing. Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you for that. I think that's a well-conceived idea. I think that's a very good approach. I appreciate that you did that, and everything you said about educating them. Just one exception, and it's not really minor. The city is the fiscal manager for the project.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have to balance our budget. That is not their purview. And
right.
I just want to make sure that differentiation, I don't think that's what you meant, but
right.
It is
it's
not their responsibility to balance our budget. It's a responsibility to balance their budget and our responsibility to do the BDD budget. Thank you. But thank you for doing that. And I think that's a very good initiative.
Okay, Mr. Eaglehoff, you're next.
Madam Chair, I think Rick has made it clear that Rick is going to do everything he needs to do the job. I would say I wouldn't recommend doing like a report on every position of the BDD, but what I would think would be useful is if Rick reported any instances where the employees had to go above the furlough to get the job done, because Rick is putting his neck out on the line for, with the city. And it would be nice that the board could back him up on his decisions to get the job done, whether that means going past the furlough to pay the employees for the work they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanson, did I see your hand up?
So I also want to express my appreciation, Madam Chair, for you bringing this to the City Council, because I feel like this has kind of been an ongoing issue, and especially since we have new members on the City Council, and we have a new mayor and a new finance and new attorney. There are a lot of people who do not understand the relationship of the board. So to the city. So I think that is really important, and I really appreciate that. One thing I wanted to go back to, Rick, was I am concerned about the air conditioning going out, and especially in these essential buildings. And are you running swamp coolers, or are you doing anything at the moment to keep everything cool? And what's the ETA to get things repaired and so on?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Hanson, we have temporary coolers set up in those critical areas. So far, we're able to keep up. It's not what we would like, but we're doing okay. Those are common areas, especially in the control room. So I want our employees to not be uncomfortable when they're in their work environment. We're able to keep up, but it's certainly not a permanent solution. And that's why we're moving forward as fast as we can to get the problem fixed. Not sure exactly what the timeline is on that. It's not going to be tomorrow, but we're going as fast as we can. We've been negotiating with TLC to make us their top priority, and they have agreed to do that. So that's the status.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I appreciate that. I can understand how serious this may be, and I'm grateful that we have the money in the major replacement fund, but this means that this probably will need to be replenished, or we will need to figure out how we're going to put this money back into the major replacement and refund that fund. So I think that is also something we need to think about with the budget and with everything that's happening.
Thank you. Councilor Romero-Worth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the risk of belaboring the previous conversation, I just want to ask Rick. Rick, to the point that water is essential, I think we're all aware of that. The BDD has been running, it's been challenging, but we have not compromised that facility because of the furloughs. We are running the way we should be running, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Romero-Worth, that is correct. We have not compromised our essential functions. We are able to meet demand.
Okay, thank you. And then also, I think I've been told anecdotally that the fact that it's city staff that is staffing the BDD, understanding the budget is the BDD, we're a separate board, we're this collaboration. Sometimes shortages, like when you have staffing issues, you're able to lean on not just the BDD employees, but other employees in the water division to help you out, not just in this instance, but in other, in other times, you have more of a pool of folks who can step in when there are shortages. Maybe, you've got too many people out sick or on vacation or that kind of thing, to make sure that you're maintaining your level of service. Is that true?
Madam Chair, Councilor Romero Worth and members of the board, that is true. We rely on other resources. That's one of the best things about the city's water division is that we're so diverse. It could be planning and water resources management, finance, HR. We tap into those resources when we need to, and they're generally available.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make those 2 points. I understand that, you know, we're a separate board. It's important that we get information in a timely manner. And, you know, I think we've been over this now quite a bit over the course of 3 meetings. So I also want you to know that I too have been in contact with city staff, the city manager, and talking about the sentiment of this board around furloughs. The first furlough was certainly a crisis situation. The second round of furloughs, I don't know how those lined up with our meetings, and I understand what's being said here, but I just want to make the point that service at the BDD has not been interrupted, and sometimes more than just the BDD employees are called into service to help the BDD, because as the commissioners have said, water is important. So just want to, I think, reassure perhaps the public that what's going on here is not compromising the service that's being provided at the BDD. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamilton and then Commissioner Hanson. You're muted, Commissioner Hamilton.
I guess I really do have to unmute first, sorry. I really appreciate that, Councilor Romero Worth, but I think the point is whether the service of BDD is not being compromised within the furlough hours or outside of them. And I think that is part of the question about whether the furloughs are really appropriate. So.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson.
So this, thank you, Councilor Romero Worth, for your comments, and I'm glad that you're looking into this. But this is a historical problem of lack of information being given to the Buckman Direct Diversion Board, even before Commissioner Hamilton and I served on this board. So I agree with Councilor Vihel Koppler that, you know, educating, letting people know what is happening is really important. But, you know, since this has happened, we both, Commissioner Hamilton and I, we just want to make sure we're on record saying that please notify us when you're going to do something and talk to us. And I think that Mr. Roach and Mr. Carpenter have both recognized that that is important and that to happen. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate that. And I'm glad that we're doing okay, Rick, and making sure that we have good quality water and enough of it to provide to our constituents.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything more before we close Rick's report? Okay, thank you, Rick. Now we're on discussion and action. Item number 14, request for approval to carry forward $380,000 of unexpended funds into yada yada. So y'all have your agenda. Mackie Romero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, during the fiscal year 2020 annual operating budget that was adopted by the board, it did include funding for 2 major projects. The first project was the BDD Security System Access Control Upgrade Project, which had budgeted an estimated $250,000. The second project was the BDD Database Migration Project, had budgeted an estimated $60,000. Just due to the lack of staffing resources and then the current pandemic, he was unable to issue a request for proposal within the budgeted fiscal year. And so With the current economic situation, the BDD is requesting to carry forward this funding into the fiscal year 2021 operating budget to be utilized for these exact same projects. This request will provide the funding needed to complete the projects without having to request additional funding from the partners. This request also includes authorization to carry forward the $70,000 of furlough savings, and we are requesting that we would use this money to support the fiscal year 2021 budget when I do bring that back to the board. So this request does include a budget amendment resolution, and that's to budget the funds for the 2 projects. And then the 70,000 would be reflective on the budget that I bring back to the board to adopt either in August or September. Are there any questions about the request?
Any questions for Mackie? Commissioner Hanson?
Mackie, I thought I saw that it was 390 in the last in the minutes, but of course now I can't find it. So I was just asking if that was a mistake in the minutes, or because I thought you did refer to this last time.
I'll have to double check the minutes, but it was 310 for the 2 projects. And then the furlough savings, again, this was estimated that we were going to have about a $70,000 savings on the first.
Okay.
Maybe the estimate in the minutes was a little bit higher. I'll have to double check that, but we did get support from the partners to carry over the 70.
So with that, Madam Chair, I would make a motion to move to approve to carry forward the 380,000 of unexpended funds from FY 2020 operation budget to the FY 2021.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Karen, will you please call for the vote?
I will.
Could I just confirm that that motion includes the bar?
Yes, and including the budget amendment resolution, the bar to move this forward.
Okay, thank you. Does the second concur?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Karen, go ahead.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Chair Vihel Coppler,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Okay, now we are on matters from the board. Are there any matters anyone wishes to bring up? Commissioner Hanson?
I want to recognize Bernadine for sending all of the great articles. You seem to not miss anything, and I get a lot of good information from you, and I just want to recognize you for that and tell you that I am grateful to you, Bern, for all the information you share with us, and thank you so much. I really am appreciated.
Thank you, Commissioner Henson. I'm glad that you find value in the emails. I sometimes wonder if I'm sending too many. Or
never. Okay,
So-
not in my opinion, you do not send too many. I am grateful for all of them, okay?
Very well. I try to send some diverse information and I hope everybody finds it interesting. Let me know if there's anything else I miss.
Anyhow, I just wanted to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bernadine. Thank you from all of us, I'm sure. And we appreciate what you do there. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else, any other matters from the board? All right, I just want to bring up real quick, you know, when you have these phones, they go back to their screen. Now I have to pull it up again. Sorry, I had it right here. With regard to the budget hearings with the city, they begin July 14th that week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then the following week, they begin that week of July 20th. And then one last budget hearing the week of, it's on the July 28th. So those are coming up. I don't know. I don't think Rick, I don't know if you know yet when BDD's portion will be, but they will be informing us what departments will be slotted in which time slots during those out. They're 1 to 5 half days. So just so y'all know that they're coming up. And if there's anything that I would need, I definitely will be talking to you, Rick, but if there's anything else that I would want from any of you all, I will be sure to call you. Tom, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you for giving us those dates, but I just want to point out that we have our BCC meetings on July 14th and I believe July 28th. And they start at, on the 28th, they start at 1 and on the 14th, they start at 2. So otherwise, we would love to be there to support you in any way, but we, both Commissioner Hamilton and I have previous commitments.
You said BCC, right? Is that what
Board
you said?
of County Commissioners.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking, I didn't quite get the B, but thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, well, our next meeting is going to be August 6th. So everybody needs to have a wonderful 4th of July in your backyards, in your kitchens, wherever it is you want to be. But apparently we're all supposed to stay home, so have fun wherever you are.
So,
All right.
Madam Chair, are we going to immediately exit to the executive
Oh,
session?
that's right, we have an executive session. Thank you for reminding me. We're not off that clear yet. All right, I'm assuming all of you have that invitation. Okay, if you can, we can exit this and sign on to the other one. Commissioner Hanson. Can't hear you.
I want to make a motion to, or let Nancy make a motion.
I'll suggest a motion for you to make, and that is that you adjourn the meeting and go into executive session in accordance with the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, Section 1015(1)(h)(7), for discussion regarding pending litigation in which the BDD is a participant, including without limitation Buckman Direct Diversion Board versus CDM Smith et al., with the case caption as contained on the agenda. And then you'll read roll call.
Second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Will you please call the roll, Karen?
I will. Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mr. Helms,
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Chair Vihil Coppler.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. So we are adjourned and we'll go into executive session now. Thank you.
Sign back in. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.